Okay, all good? First, we'll apologize for the sauna. We're going to begin our work session this evening, and we are speaking this evening about Heritage Alternative Learning Center expansion. And I will turn that over to Dr. Granville.
Okay, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for being here tonight to talk about an exciting proposal that we've got. We've been working on this for the past couple of years, looking at ways to better serve our kids as we've seen the increased demand for mental health services across our district, and we saw a significant gap in the ability to serve some of our elementary students. So I'm going to go over a little bit of the history of Heritage Landing, which is our alternative school that currently serves students in grades 6 through 12. That wasn't always the case. Up until a few years ago, it was only a high school program, and we worked to fill that program by contracting out with other school districts. So we had a much smaller population of Francis Howell students needing that level of support and service to be successful. And that just continued to grow. We added a middle school component a few years ago. We've added supports for students that have autism a few years ago, and we just tried to adapt the program as much as we can to the students' needs, and that includes we don't have any students currently being served from out of district. Our current need is increased demand in social emotional supports with elementary students. And this is something that we've seen really starting in our early childhood about 6 years ago. And this isn't just a Francis Howell thing. This is a nationwide thing that we're seeing mental health issues increase with students. We actually saw a report this week where at the early childhood level we have about 450 students we're serving this year. And that is the largest group of students we have ever served. And so when you think as a whole, the population of Francis Howell is stable, but our early childhood students who need services and supports continues to increase pretty significantly. And many of those students need supports in the areas of social emotional learning. And as those kids get older, they need more and more supports in our elementary sites. And so in 16-17, we had a work group that came together. We talked about needing more education support counselors, and the board was able to provide us those supports. We talked about expanding special education supports, and we were able to rearrange some of our existing staffing to be more coaches and consultants, including when we had an opportunity, one of the special ed program coordinators resigned. We hired a mental health coordinator, so getting that real expertise in the district. And I can say right now we probably have the most mental health supports and services than anyone. We really do have some layers that other districts can't celebrate. And then one of the final recommendations, which I think was one of those really stretch goals for the group, was to open an elementary day school. So originally that thought was, well, we'll just open a second school, but when you really start to look at it, that doesn't make sense. We have a principal, we have a nurse, we have a lot of supports in a current building that it wouldn't be responsible for us to just open a completely separate school that would require duplicates of all those services. So we started exploring the idea of expanding the current Heritage program, and initially started looking at exploring just expanding the building. But as we dug into that, and for any of you that have visited Heritage, and I know many of you attended the graduations there in the past, it isn't a building that has a lot of space available for expansion. There's some significant parking issues. Adding an elementary component would mean we'd need to add some playground equipment. We just don't have a lot of those options there. So we started looking at what other ideas we would have. But just some things to celebrate in general. We've got and some things that we want everyone to know about. We have students right now in our elementary schools, and every year they transition into Heritage. So we're able to help them be successful in their current elementary schools, or in one of our right now the only ED program we have is at Harvest Ridge, but they're really not integrated into the school. They're self-contained in a classroom, and we can't provide what we would consider a therapeutic program, but they can still manage, and we know we can provide better services there than we could in an outside day placement, but we could do even more if we had that heritage site. So every year we see a handful of students, usually anywhere from 3 to 6, transition into 6th grade at Heritage. Over the time then we see students in that program transitioning back to their home schools. And so Dr. Hahn and his team at Heritage has done a phenomenal job of making sure that even if it's not transitioning back full-time, they're in the middle and high schools on partial days. So that's been a big celebration for us. So one of the things that we really started digging into is the money piece, because if we're going to do any type of expansion, it needs to make some level of fiscal sense. We do contract, I think a good example is the Center for Autism. They do really wonderful things for kids. Some very needy students go there, and we know that it would be impossible for us to replicate that type of program. But we know the support that we could provide at Heritage is something a little different. We have experience with that, and we could do a great job with our elementary students if we had the opportunity. So we started digging into, well, what does it cost? And one of the surprising things, it's not the tuition to send students to an outside placement, it's the transportation to send students to an outside placement. And that's kind of that hidden cost that people don't realize. But many times we're spending more to transport students from their home to a site like Great Circle than we would to actually educate them at Great Circle. So when we started looking at this a couple years ago, we used the cost of transportation as a way to justify the ability to save money in the long term by opening our own program. And so you'll see that when we looked at last year's costs, we were spending almost $32,000 per student being transported outside the district. And when we look at how much it costs to transport students to Heritage, it's about 1/10 of that. And then when we also figure in tuition costs, and we've put that up there to $41,000 per year, we knew that we could save significant money over time taking care of our kids and provide better services. So the two ideas that had been bounced around the past couple of years, the first was adding a classroom addition onto Heritage. Again, it's a very small footprint, so there's not a lot of options. The architect did go out and look at the site and put some ideas and plans together, and it would cost about $1 million, and the estimate for this is probably a year plus old, so I'm sure the cost would go up. It would add 2,700 square feet to the building, a couple of classrooms, a small office, that's about it. We had to do some pretty significant renovations to the parking lot to make that work, just because there's very limited parking there. And so it wouldn't give us a whole lot of additional space, just enough to add that elementary wing. And then we started exploring, well, what other options would we have in the community? And we came across a facility that would be somewhere between $2 to $2.3 million that would offer us 23,000 square feet and 11 classrooms and office space, and provide more than enough parking for the program and any other uses of the building it could provide. And I know that's a project that we've been kind of working on for the past few months to see what that would look like in a possibility. I don't know, Kevin, if there's anything more you'd like to say about that option. Okay. And then as we went through this and we knew that we'd be moving a program out, and we know that space is tight in the district for many of our programs, we wanted to think through, well, what ifs if we did move Heritage to another site. And so the ideas up here were a quick brainstorming session we had a few months ago. Renting to Sodexo, utilizing the space as a parents' as teachers hub. Right now they're based out of the 3 early childhood buildings, but space has become tight there as we've grown the programs. Using it for after-school robotics, so allowing the students in those programs to have a classroom, office space for those in Building C. And Building C is out at the Francis Howell campus, and there's a lot of issues with that site. Some learning space for high school, or other options as we look through the strategic plan and needs. And I think that if we were to move into the other facility, that would probably be our next priority, is to figure out what we could do to make the best use of the current Heritage building. So our recommendation would be to pursue the new site. It offers us more than just the 11 classrooms. It is a newer site, about 13 years old, but it also has some large meeting spaces, office space. It gives us a lot of flexibility, and that we believe that within 10 years we can there start to be some cost savings in the district, if not sooner. It's really hard to predict, but what we know is the past few years we've been increasingly sending students out because of their level of need. And so this is a today estimate, but honestly next year or the year after we could see more students need to be placed in day schools, and that cost savings could actually increase significantly. So that's the end of the presentation. If there's any questions from the board or cabinet.
So we just wanted to bring the proposal to the board. I want to thank Dr. Vanderbilt for all of his work on this as we think about what are our next steps in providing that programming for our students with emotional challenges at elementary. Just wanted you to see kind of the conversation and the options and kind of where we are at this point in our proposal. It's exciting work.
Will, I know in our conversations you've expressed some concern about outside placements, just in terms of the ability to continue to do that as facilities that offer the services we're looking for are beginning to contract. So is it fair to say that in addition to the advantages that we've outlined here, there's a real possibility that we could be forced into having to do something because the resources we're currently using may not be available? Right,
and so that is a good point. We've had 2 day schools in the past few years, Electus and Epworth, shut down. They just haven't been viable. And we've heard rumors of one of the large day schools in the area closing due to some financial constraints. So there was some plans being made and what ifs if we needed to pull the kids back or find a plan B. And what we find is there'll be small day schools that'll pop up periodically, and then it doesn't work out, or they don't have because the need, just like we talked about earlier, we had a lot of students coming in from outside the district because we had space, and so we were able to help others and provide a good service, and now we don't. And hopefully in 10 years we don't have as many kids needing this level of support. I mean, that would be the goal, and we could go back to providing supports to the county as a whole. But we always want to keep that program full and viable, and so we need to have options for both. But we have seen some issues with that, yes.
I do. So, 10 years you get your money back for that property in the savings that we would have, and then to start to save additional funds after that. But one of the really driving forces behind this proposal is we think we could provide better service for our students in our own program. So again, having students with emotional challenges traveling to a site outside of their district and being with other students in something that might not meet the expectations that we would have in Francis Howell is not necessarily good for kids. So in addition to the cost savings, we believe this will be better for some of our most challenging students.
And just to add on to that, we have the students that we do have out for emotional challenges. Very rarely do they come back to Francis Howell. Once they're out, typically it is impossible, whether it's transportation or connection to the district, to get them back. But again, at Heritage, we've been successful, even if it's just partial day, getting students back into their home schools.
Will, is it correct to think that the earlier intervention by working with elementary students, that we'll be able to successfully transition them to a regular high school environment that perhaps is not an option because they only joined the program as a middle school or high school?
That would be one of the big goals. If we get kiddos when they're littler, we're providing a lot of direct counseling support, mental health supports. We're helping the family with wraparound supports. It's something that's a little more difficult to do in a building of 800 that we could do in a building of 35 or 40. So that would be one of our big goals is, we want kids to get to a place they don't need us. So
that was one of my questions. Second question is a building of 2,300 square feet,
Mhm.
will that leave room for growth?
The
Is it going to be full day one, or is there room for growth over the next 5 years?
So the
5
new
years.
building will have 27,000 square feet. The 2,300 is the addition that we were looking at.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
Okay, there one, okay.
Yeah, no, I
I'll take
think,
it.
I think that the new site would give us, depending on how we arrange things, at least 1 or 2 extra classrooms if we wanted to expand. But the number we're looking at right now seems to be very appropriate and actually probably provides us with more space than we need. So, yeah.
So there
I
is
think
room for growth.
There is room for growth,
Right.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
And help me understand for clarity, if we move in this direction, at the beginning, would we be only serving our students? Or are we looking to, is there space to accommodate other districts' students, like a tuition-based program?
In the short term, the first year, we would want it to be running well with our own kids, and then we would just look at what's available. And we'd want to be cautious because we wouldn't want to fill the program with students from other districts.
If we need the space.
Because we need the space, yes. So I think that the middle and high school programs have, what I would consider have been full. And I could see our elementary programs filling after the first few months. But again, if we get to a place where the students are getting the help earlier and they don't need us in those upper levels and we need to fill classrooms, there is always people looking for good placements for kids.
Dr. Vanderpool, do you see this as being a climate also helping the elementary schools with, because right now we have a lot of kids that can and do disrupt learning. Do you see us moving some of those kiddos into this new space that we would see a change in the climate in some of our buildings?
I do think there's a level of frustration that builds up with staff. They're working with some really tough kids. They're not able to provide the level of service that they may need. They're being successful, but not as successful as they feel like they should be. And this will give us an opportunity, I think, an outlet valve, so that we can give kids those really intense services. And then those staff can start focusing on another group, because there's always a student. At the kiddos that we're transitioning to Heritage, there's always another level, there's always another student. So I think this will give them the opportunity to send kids to a place that'll get the help they need and then support the next group of kids that are underneath that.
Thank you.
Board, any other questions at this point? Dr. Van Poel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the presentation.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, we will reconvene on the dais at 7 p.m.
Long day?
Yes, these last 2 days have just been, I don't know what's in the air. I know.
I usually don't have a clue, so I'm right in there.
They're not here. We got piano lessons.
No, that's good. I appreciate that.
Janet,
Whose is this?
Janet.
We did the two.
Oh, you know what? You do that. You can check that.
It's because Chad didn't.
It's Chad's cheat sheet.
That was Chad's cheat sheet, not Chad's. There's some chairs up here. There's some chairs up here. I'm the first row. I'm first. Okay, we all have back row back. I mean, I said it. Everybody. staff anymore. Oh, thank you, Joe. Oh, by the way, okay, great. Telling you now, I
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I would like to call to order the Francis House School District Board of Education meeting to order at 7 p.m. This evening we are going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by our Boy Scout Troop number 30. I pledge allegiance. Wait, you're not there yet.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry, I didn't mean to rain on your parade. I thought.
She was really. She just wanted to. I couldn't see you.
Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mr. Lang. By roll call. Ms. Walker?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Next on our agenda this evening is recognitions. Mr. Dykeman.
Thank you, Mrs. Cope. 4 Francis Howell District students who are blind or visually impaired were recently honored for their performance in the Braille Challenge Regional Competition. Tyler Groves, a 6th grader at Sager Middle, and Luke McKeon, a 4th grader at Warren Elementary, both captured a first place finish. Gentlemen, you want to start making your way up here to the podium? Stay right here. Also, Francis Howell Central sophomore Claire Wright and Warren 4th grader Olivia Wright both received honorable mention. Ladies? Any blind or visually impaired student who can read and write Braille is eligible to participate in the Braille Challenge. Contestants are divided into 5 categories and tested on fundamental Braille skills, such as reading comprehension, spelling, speed and accuracy, proofreading, and charts and graphs. Contestants are judged by volunteer teachers of the visually impaired and scored locally by volunteer transcribers based on national guidelines. The Braille Challenge is the only academic challenge of its kind in North America for students who are blind or visually impaired. The Braille Institute developed the challenge to motivate students to practice and hone their Braille literacy skills, which are essential to future academic and employment success. Your Braille Challenge competitors, ladies and gentlemen.
Can we get our picture taken with you?
Yeah. Wonderful. We're very proud of you.
And while you guys can't necessarily see it in the audience, our Superintendent Certificates for this award have a Braille overlay.
You guys look great. All right, everybody look up and smile. Smile.
Yep, we got it. We're almost done.
There we go.
There you go.
There we go. Chin ups, big smiles.
Let's take one more. Thank you, guys.
Great job, guys.
Francis Howell students recently participated in the Missouri Tri-County Regional Science and Engineering Fair and competed against other schools from St. Charles, Lincoln, and Warren counties. After choosing and researching their topics, students analyzed their data, formulated a hypothesis, and created displays to share during the science fair. Our first place winners were Alyssa Corbett from Bryan Middle, and her project was the effect of different liquids on a hydraulic press's ability to crush a soda can. Alyssa? Also from Bryan, 8th grader Emma Schulmer and her experiment on the effect of different brands of tennis balls on rebound height. From Causley Elementary, 5th grader Vinay Kanduru and his research on does homemade toothpaste work as good as store-bought toothpaste? And it does, yes. The answer to your burning question is yes, it does. And finally, from Fairmont Elementary, brothers Jude and Cruz Weedman and their project, How Height Impacts How Much Shake Your Building Can Take. Oh, yep.
Brothers, here's your certificate.
Because we know brothers love to share, guys.
We can probably get them another one.
A total of 20 elementary and middle school students from Francis Howell placed in the fair. The district is proud to recognize these students and their commitment to scientific work because STEM activities in Francis Howell are a tradition. Tradition.
I just wanted to say, Renee said that the homemade toothpaste works better.
Ooh, okay.
So I'll whip yourself up some toothpaste.
I'll do it.
Which tennis ball bounce better? Oh, really?
And how much shake can your building take?
Great job, guys.
Thank you, Mrs. Coe.
All right, next on our agenda is patron comments. I don't see any this evening. Okay. FHEA? FISPA? Next on our agenda is an exciting time. We have two newly or re-elected board members, and I'd like to turn it over to Laura Heidenreich, our secretary for the board, as she will administer the oath of office.
We need our cheat sheets.
You don't have to bring your cheat sheets. Repeat after me. Would you raise your right hand, please? And repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
and I will faithfully and impartially discharge
the duties of School Board Director
the duties of school board director
in and for the Francis Howell R3 School District,
in and for the Francis Howell R3 School District,
County of St. Charles,
County of St. Charles,
State of Missouri,
State of Missouri,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
according to law,
according to law,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
I'll get you later.
All right, next on our agenda is the reorganization of our board, and we begin with the nomination of the Board of Education President, and I will turn that over to Dr. Hendricks Harris.
As the board, I'm going to conduct the election of the president of the Francis Howell Board of Education. And at this time, I would like to accept nominations for the president of the board.
I'd like to nominate Chad Lane.
Do you accept?
I do not. I respectfully decline and would like to nominate Ms. Coe.
Do you accept?
I do.
Are there further nominations? At this time, I'll entertain a motion to close nominations for the president of the Francis Howell Board of Education. By roll call.
Ms. Walker? Aye.
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 Abstain.
This time, I'll accept a motion to nominate Renee Cope as president of the Francis Howell Board of Education. By roll call.
Ms. Lang?
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Nay.
I'll now turn the nomination process back over to Ms. Cope.
Great, thank you, Dr. Hendricks Harris. Next on our agenda is the nomination for the vice president position. I would accept nominations at this time for that vice president position.
I'd like to nominate Chad Lane.
Mr. Lane, do you accept?
I do.
Are there any other nominations? I'll entertain a motion to close the nomination for the vice president position. By roll call.
Mr. Lane? Aye.
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 Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Lane. Board, I'll now entertain nominations for the position of treasurer.
I nominate Mr. Lane.
Mr. Lane, do you accept?
I do.
Are there any other nominations? Board, I'll entertain the motion to close nominations for the position of treasurer by roll call.
Mr. Lang?
Aye.
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 Aye. Congratulations, Mr. Lane. Board, I'll entertain a motion to appoint Laura Heidenreich as Secretary of the Board of Education, who shall enter upon her respective duties again the 15th day of July 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mr. Lane. By roll call.
Ms. Stiglitz?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Congratulations, Mrs. Heidenreich. Thank you. Board, I entertain a motion to authorize the Francis Howell School District to continue to use the current signature plates bearing the signature of President Renee Cope and Treasurer Patrick Lane.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Stiglitz. By roll call.
Mr. Hain?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Board, next on our agenda is our MSBA delegate and alternate. First, I would entertain a motion for nominations for the MSBA delegate.
You can nominate yourself. I'd like to nominate Mike Hayes.
Chad's been doing it.
Second.
Mr. Haynes, do you accept that nomination? Sure. By roll call? Ms. Walker?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Now, Board, I will entertain a motion for nominations for the alternate for the MSBA delegate.
I nominate Ms. Stiglitz.
Ms. Stiglitz, do you accept that nomination?
I will.
Any other nominations? By roll call?
Ms. Lang?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Board, I entertain a motion to re-adopt the financial disclosure policy and regulation as required by, well, I messed this word up, every other year.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. By roll call?
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. All right. Next on our agenda is our consent agenda. Board, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented for April 11th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mr. Lane. By roll call.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, next on our agenda is a presentation on our academic high target section, and I will turn it over to Dr. Will Vanderpool. Twice in one night we get to hear from you.
I'm feeling pretty special tonight, so I want to thank everyone for allowing me to be here and celebrate the wonderful work we do every day in our vision program. And maybe if I could start by having anyone who's going to present to come on up. And I'm going to recognize 4 members of our team that are here tonight. Kevin Hollinger, one of our vision teachers and O&M specialists. Laura Gear, one of our vision teachers. Craig Phillips, our O&M for this year, and then Mr. Eddie Rogers, our program coordinator that supports the vision program. And they've got a great presentation for you. And as I understand how presentations go, fidgets really help, even adults. So I'm going to go up to the board and give you some fidgets so you can see some of the cool things our kids use every day. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Hollinger. Go ahead and start our presentation.
Thank you, guys. We're really excited to be here. We're glad that a lot of our students and families joined us. So we just want to take just a few minutes to talk about who we are and what we do. We're very small in terms of special education, but we say we're small but mighty. So teachers of the visually impaired, we are responsible for teaching the expanded core curriculum, which Ms. Gear is going to talk about. We are responsible for all the Braille, all the assistive technology, all the adaptive living skills. O&M specialists, myself and Craig, are responsible for all the travel skills. You'll see us out on the street corners with kids, teaching them to cross streets. Yes, blind people do cross streets. And finally, the district also has a position called the accessible material specialist. And when they're passing around the Braille, you'll see it's her job to take anything in print and convert it over to Braille and graphics and so on. Starting in 1999, when I started 20 years ago, by the way, I'm a homegrown graduate of Francis Howell North, there were 6 students in our program. Now we have 42 students. Unfortunately, we lost 2 students earlier this year. They were sweet young ladies. And we're getting 2 new ones, so we're going to have 44 kids in our program. So we continue to grow and grow and grow. A recent update we want to share with you in our program, we were able to secure a grant for just under $10,000 from the Lighthouse Program in St. Louis to give 10 families in our district a GPS device and also what's called a pen friend, which is an audio labeling system. So the Lighthouse sponsored these 10 kids. We had an event here in the boardroom, and we spent over 2 hours in training these families to use these devices. And some of our kids, like Tyler, is walking from his house to Sager Middle School, and we have another boy that is walking down Mid River Small Drive and going to Mod Pizza. So it's a really wonderful thing that we get to partner with our community. Ms. Gear?
So one of the main things that we teach is we're not academic teachers. We don't really teach reading and writing and math per se, but we are responsible for the expanded core curriculum, which is listed up on the slide. So I'm just going to briefly go through those 9 areas to kind of give you an idea of what we do on a daily basis. So the first thing we teach is compensatory or functional skills. This is how can we access the world if we don't have vision? Do we use Braille? Do we use the math code for Braille? Do we use tactile graphics, organization, audio materials? Those are all those skills that a student would need. Orientation and mobility, like Mr. Hollinger said, was travel skills. Where am I in space? Where am I going? How can I get there? How can I cross the street? How can I use Uber? All of these things that would be necessary for independent living. Social interaction. When you don't have vision, it can be difficult to understand body language, facial expressions, how much personal space do I need, how do I back and forth in a conversation. So those are all things that we will directly instruct. Independent living is my favorite. Things like cooking and cleaning and how do I make my clothes match and how do I organize my pantry and how do I organize my wallet. These are all things that we teach. Recreation and leisure is just that. Activities, whether it's independent or with a group, whether it's sports or just having fun, however that looks for each student. Career education, letting students know what careers are even out there. What is options for them? How can they be ready for that? How are you on time? How do you know your strengths? How do you know what you want to do? Being ready to transfer into that adult life. Technology is a huge part of what we teach, whether it's for refreshable Braille displays, a Perkins Brailler. Some of it's very low tech, like a magnifier or a monocular. Some of it's very high tech, but all of those devices that are needed to access not just the curriculum, but the world. Sensory efficiency is using the senses that you do have, obviously in an efficient way, whether that's listening to books, because I can listen much faster than I can read, however that is. And then self-determination is how do I get where I want to be? How do I set a goal? How do I problem solve? How do I set the steps to get there? How do I advocate for myself? Can I say to someone, hey, I need this in another accessible way and have them understand what I need? And now we actually have a couple of parents, Mr. and Mrs. Wright, and then Mrs. Guys are going to come up and just share a little bit about how the program has impacted their families.
Hi, my name is Jeff Wright. It's my wife, Jennifer. Our daughter, Claire, you met earlier as part of the Braille Challenge piece. And so about 4 years ago, we were at a crossroads. We were in a small school district in Illinois, and we had a decision to make. We felt like we needed to move for Claire's benefit. And so what we did was we picked a spot, St. Louis, 60-mile radius, and we figured out where we were going to go, what was the best district to go to.
No, we asked all the specialists in the area, and every single specialist in the area directed us to Francis Howell.
Yes.
So that's something to say for yourself.
And we were moving from a place where my wife had lived her whole life. I had actually been a teacher and an administrator in that school district too as well. So this was something that we didn't take lightly. And when we made this leap of faith, it was very easy, and it continues to be one of the best choices we've made in our life. As Claire moved here, her Braille reading speed, which you found out her being here in the challenge, her Braille reading speed doubled the first semester she was in your school district here. So things like that, along with her independence, her technology skills, just all of those things have been phenomenal. She's involved in things like marching band at Francis House Central right now too as well. So we couldn't be happier, and we know the resources and those kinds of things are very limited these days, and we appreciate your guys' support because this is a top-notch program and it makes a difference for folks like us.
So my son is JT. He is 4, and from the moment I found out that he was blind, I was asking every organization, support group, teacher that came into our house, like,
where is the very best school to get him educated at? And after some time and asking about 100 different questions in 100 different ways, they said Francis Howell School District, it rose above the rest. Oh, I'm nervous. So I met with a couple of moms whose blind children attended Warren Elementary, and they would not be quiet about how wonderful this program was. And the final confirmation came when JT was about 3, and my husband and I met with Kevin. And he explained in detail what school would look like for him, from preschool all the way to high school. And it was overwhelming to think of my little man in high school, but it was completely necessary. We left that meeting knowing that JT was in good hands. Your vision team has a plan and has executed it in the past. It was then, and it continues to be, a comfort for me to know that children have gone before him and that he will be following in this path that is well established and proven successful. JT started preschool and it was intense. There was so much for him to learn. Braille, yes, but social and motor skills, and being able to navigate himself around a room or a school. And this early intervention has proven invaluable, and it will prove invaluable as he grows. I quickly discovered that my child needs that intense and constant instruction. He began to thrive in that environment and has learned a solid foundation to move forward into kindergarten. None of this would be possible without Laura. Her knowledge and skill set is amazing, but her patience is truly remarkable. I cannot even imagine the hours she spent brainstorming ideas of ways to make my son learn, just my son. In addition to teaching JT skills he needs to succeed in his education, the Vision team has gone above and beyond to help us as a family. They are passionate and they are selfless. They step away from their education roles to genuinely care for the whole family. Craig has begun to work with JT and has quickly become his mentor. They are buddies. And work doesn't seem like work when you got a friend by you. I know without a shadow of a doubt, this is by far the very best school district that we could put our son in. Just want to take a quick moment to thank each and all of you for everything that you do for our family, for your encouragement and support. It has made the world feel smaller and given me the confidence I've needed as a parent. Lastly, I know that you didn't ask me for this, but I strongly recommend that you give these people a raise and maybe a vacation at the beach.
So obviously it wouldn't be possible without this great team, and the 3 folks that we have right now do phenomenal things, and because of your support, next year we'll have another addition to our team, and so we're just very excited that we continue to do great things for kids. Do you all have any questions for us?
I think our audience needs some Kleenex. That was so wonderful. Thank you. Excellent presentation, wonderful program to learn a little bit more about. Board, do you have any questions or comments? Mrs. Walker.
I think it was fantastic to hear from the families. We don't get to hear from very many parents or families, so I just want to thank you guys for being willing to come up here because it was fantastic to hear these positive stories.
Thank you very much. Oh,
Mrs.
sorry,
Cope,
Mr.
I'd like to
Sauer.
share one thing. I know Kevin won't brag on himself, but for years he was a strong advocate for getting sidewalks by Francis Howell Central to make sure that vision impaired students could navigate those streets more easily. And when that project finally came to fruition, he was right there helping to plan that. So it's just another example of the lengths that our teachers go to ensure that our kids have access to everything that they need. So clearly not in his job description to lobby local municipalities to make changes to their infrastructure, but it's just the way Kevin approaches his work.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you. Excellent presentation. Board, next on our agenda under fiscal responsibility is our projected tax liability notice, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Supple.
Thanks, Mrs. Cope. As I shared in the memo, this is not, we're not setting the tax rate tonight, but we're required by law to provide information to St. Charles County, and then they in turn send that information out to local residents. So we did see a healthy increase in our assessed value, at least in the preliminary numbers that were shared with us. And as a result, we have to roll our rate back in order to remain in compliance with the Hancock Amendment. So we're reducing our tax rate by 24.5 cents based on our preliminary estimates. And you can see that that's in line with what's happening in the other school districts in St. Charles County. So we will continue to get updated information that'll come to us in August after the Board of Equalization finishes their meetings, and that's the information that we'll use when we set the tax rate. We tend to see some variability over time because assessed valuation is changing every day, but I think the general trend will hold true. So I would expect to see a similar level of reduction at the time that we set our tax rate in September. And this information was filed with the county April 1st. That was their required date. So just so you know, this has already been sent on to the county.
Thank you, Mr. Supple. Board, do you have any questions? Mr. Lee?
As a patron, Kevin, basically, our tax rate on our home will be about the same because our home is worth more estimated value, but we'll still generate the same taxes for the school. If we're asked.
You're channeling Dr. Hendricks Harris here.
Oh, it's a question we ask many ways over the course of time until we understand it.
It's a little bit, it makes a lot of sense to me, but I'll try to make sure that I explain it in a way so that everybody can understand it too. We deal with the tax rate based on the aggregate change in assessed valuation across the thousands of parcels of property that comprise the Francis Howell School District. Now, that means that there are people whose properties increased less than the average, and some people whose properties increased more than the average. And so our rate is determined by the average change. So to the extent that your home changed in direct relationship to the average change in Francis Howell, your taxes would be exactly the same. That's the concept. If our assessed valuation went up 10% and your home went up 8%, your taxes would be lower next year. If ours went up 10% and your home went up 15%, your taxes would be higher next year. But the Francis Howell School District, for existing properties, would collect essentially the same money.
Very good explanation. Board, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Supple. Next on our agenda is purchases over $7,500. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. Board, any questions? By roll call?
Ms. Walker?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Supple, I believe you had some additional information?
Yes, I just wanted to share with the board that we are in the process of working to purchase a fuel truck as part of the equipment necessary for our in-house transportation operations. What I've come to learn is that there aren't very many of these available. A new one takes about a year to build. And we had done some preliminary investigation and saw a truck that we thought would be great. And by the time Jen had a chance to tell me about it, somebody else had purchased it. So we found a second one, and I've authorized Mike Dieters to drive up to Iowa to take a look at it. And he's going to be taking a deposit check with him, because if it fits our needs, we want to make sure that somebody doesn't buy it out from under us. So he will be taking an $18,500 check with him so that he can make a deposit on this fuel truck. And then we will bring it to the board as a purchase, as we normally would do. But given the shortage of this piece of this equipment, it's just not generally available. And we were lucky to find what is essentially a brand new truck, and we're going to have the tank that sits on it is going to be refurbished. So it's kind of new, kind of used. It's going to meet our needs. But we don't want it to slip away. But I wouldn't have been able to wait until the next board meeting. We just found it, and I wouldn't have been able to wait to the next board meeting to bring that to you for authorization, because somebody else probably would have bought it. So our plan is to have Mike go up next week and hopefully find out that it's in good shape and make a deposit so that we can bring that back for final approval.
Board, any questions about that? Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Supple. Also, under purchases over $7,500, we have pulled a particular item out to be voted on separately. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 for the Health Master Student Health Tracking System as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Lang. By roll call.
Ms. Lang?
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0-1. Board, next on our agenda is monthly financial report. I would entertain a motion to approve the monthly financial report for March 2019 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Stiglich. Any questions? By roll call.
Mr. Lang?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Board, next on our agenda is our school food service vendor motion. I would entertain a motion to enter into a contract with Sodexo Incorporated for management of the district's food service program for the 2019-2020 school year, with options to renew for 4 additional one-year terms, according to the terms outlined in the company's response to the district's request for proposal.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Lang. Mr. Supple, did you have anything to add?
I really appreciate the time that all of the companies put into submitting proposals for us. It is a real pleasure for me to be able to bring this recommendation tonight. We have a really great partner in Sodexo, and I will say that one thing that I didn't include in the memo previously, but Dr. Vanderpool reminded me, and we had an opportunity to see some of the great work that we do with our students with special needs, but Sodexo has been partnering with students who need some additional help in order to be successful in this world, and they actually give an opportunity for those students, essential skills students, to work in our cafeterias and to have that as their learning environment. Saves us from having to find a vendor in the outside world who's willing to do that. And Sodexo has actually hired one of those students to be a regular employee for them, and there's another one in the pipeline. So it's just another example how they're not just a provider to us, they're really a partner in the work that we do, and looking for ways to continue to work with us. So I think that's just a great example of why it was easy for us to bring this recommendation tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Supple. Board, any questions or comments? Mr. Haynes.
Mr. Supple, could you explain to everybody why, when you're looking at this chart and graph, you can see that we're offered guarantees by these other companies, and Sodexo is by far the lowest, but why that's not as significant as it would be in another line item or something like that. Could you explain that to everybody so that
Sure.
they understand?
The first thing is that Cindy Rahman and I had to be very careful in our analysis so that we take a look at what is both achievable as well as what's promised. And as we have a better insight into our food service program because we work with it every day. And we believe that vendors who aren't currently our partners believe that they're going to be able to produce significant increases in student participation, and many of the programs that they were touting in order to boost participation are programs that we already have in place. And so the guarantee number, I think, was based on perhaps an inflated sense of the level of additional participation that would be able to be generated. So I think that's one factor. But let's assume that they're wildly successful in doing that. The additional funds that are generated can only be used in service of the food service program. And we've been investing some significant sums over the past several years to keep our physical plant in very good shape. We've completely remodeled some kitchens, we bought a lot of new equipment, and so I think our program right now is at an appropriate place where it's operating in the black. We have funds available to us to address specific needs as they come up. We know that with some changes in the federal program, we may need to, and the way that we want to approach cooking in general as we move forward, we may need to add some additional freezer space. And we have the capital funds available to do that because the food service program has already generated that. But if we generated significantly more than that, we'd be stuck either with a large fund balance that DESE and USDA frown upon, or we'd be spending money for equipment that we don't really need. So I think the level of profitability that our program has right now is appropriate for us to continue to support it in a great way. I think the other thing that I looked at that was very important to me is that if you look down the list of revenue and expenditures, the item that stuck out to me was that the closest competitor would have been spending significantly less on employee benefits than what our current vendor is providing. And so that would have meant a pretty direct impact to a number of very dedicated men and women who serve our kids every day. And if you make it's not a one-for-one adjustment, but if you would bring the level of benefit expenditure up to what Sodexo is currently doing, the difference between the annual guarantee, if you take that off the bottom line, the difference between the annual guarantee would be pretty minimal. So I think comparing apples to apples and taking a look at the partnerships and understanding that just generating more money for the sake of generating more money doesn't necessarily benefit us. There's a limited amount of things that we can spend it on. And if we had been in a very deficient place, we might be having a different conversation. But we've been very judicious in taking care of our kitchens over time and adding the equipment necessary to provide a very robust program for our kids.
Thank you, Mr. Sobel. Mr. Lee?
I just wanted to say that a couple weeks ago, Ms. Stiglich and I went to the National School Board Conference, and Sodexo had some corporate folks there, and it was pretty amazing to be able to share some of the stories that Ms. Mann and them have here going on with the food truck and the Iron Chef and just with the big group of people around, and it was pretty exciting to just share that.
And to piggyback on that, we made sure that they knew what a great job that these folks do in the Francis House School District. We sang their praises up and down from the top all the way down. You guys do a tremendous job.
Excellent. All right, by roll call.
Mr. Lang?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Next on our agenda under strategic planning is our board meeting schedule. So board, I will entertain a motion to approve not only the 2019-2020, but also the 2020-2021, try to say that 3 times fast, board meeting schedules as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Lang. This has come to us in this form for both calendar years, just to help with general school scheduling. Keep in mind that we can vote to move a date later on if we would need to. Board, any questions on that? Okay, by roll call.
Ms. Stiglich.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Next on our agenda is under strategic planning is committee updates. We're going to hear today on goal 1 and 2, and I'll turn that over to Dr. Hogan.
Thank you. Excited to give you an update on goal number 1. Under celebrations, and I'll go a little quickly through this, everything is on the form there for you, but most of our celebrations on goal 1 center around the fact that we have a lot of different focus areas under one roof, and so we're really looking at how we can narrow that down. The excitement we have right now is we've finally been able to narrow down into, looks like right now going to be 7 different action areas we're going to assign action teams to and be ready to go. So we're looking forward at our next meeting to be able to tee that up for our action teams to get started on the research. A lot of our action areas are going to start with research and a lot of time spent really understanding the best way to approach this for our school district. But all of the work we've put in to build a foundation throughout the year really has us ready now to put some good work in place here in the near future. You can also see our last bullet there under celebrations. Didn't want to spend time repeating some of the things we've mentioned, but we do have several areas of work that have already been underway this year that tie directly in with our strategic plan. Next, our key performance indicators. Again, we reported these during the last update, so there's no change here. We have had a pretty good focus on those now for a few months and really narrowing down from there. One of the challenges that we're experiencing, and we feel good about where we're going with it, but at first glance, it looks like in our area, a lot of our indicators are based on high school kids, just to say, oh, those are all things that you'd look at the end of high school. And that's true, but those are all written as lagging indicators with an understanding that the work to get you there starts at a young age. So while it looks like the indicators that we've presented look like you're only talking about how we would measure an 18-year-old student, we're really looking at action steps that are going to say, what might that look like in pre-kindergarten? What might that look like in elementary school and middle school and high school? So as our actions come together, we will see that focus crystallize around where we intend to end up. Also, with our goal area being so broad, being very careful and cognizant of the fact that our actions will overlap a lot of things going on just in the other goal areas and as well as just many existing programs across the district. So trying to be very aware of the impact we would have on the staff who will be carrying this work out. What things have we been doing that maybe we should stop doing? How do the new things we're looking at fit within current structures? Are they new? All of that are things we definitely need to keep in mind as we move forward. As far as resources needed, that will take clear shape as the action teams get their research done and come back with recommendations. We're fully aware that there'll be financial and human resources needed to get this work done. Nothing right now that we need, but those are things that will definitely be out there for consideration as we move forward. And our task right now and our next steps is we intend at our next committee meeting to put a final stamp on our action team work to get moving forward on our strategy 1 and start assigning those action teams and releasing them to start doing the work. Any questions on goal 1?
Any questions, board? Thank you.
All right. And for goal 2, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Patterson.
Hi, good evening, board. I'm just going to give you a quick update because you have our report. So what we are really excited about and some of the big highlights, on April 4th, we had EAB, that's the research group that we use. They came to the district and we had a fantastic presenter, and he presented to all of our elementary principals, counselors, ESCs, our Inspire group, and then our Goal 2 standing committee members. And he presented to us 15 of the best practices to use for behavior disruptions at the early grades.
And so that really got some energy in the room around, we are doing a lot of good things, but what could we be doing to move forward? And so some good thoughts were generated, and hopefully then that moves into the work teams for Goal 2. On April 15th, we're having an all-day planning day meeting and we will focus pretty much on strategy 1 the whole day. Because like we updated you last time, our last full day, we focused solely on strategy 2, the technology part of it. So this time we'll focus on the social emotional, how we provide the system of support, including the interventions and enrichments to meet the social and emotional needs of all of our kids. I know that Rich Wilson will want me to let you know that something big out of strategy 2 though coming up is on April 23rd. They will have their first learning management system action team meeting. So that is a next step for them, starting to have that action team look at, investigate, research learning management systems. And that group is also starting to collect data on the current levels of teacher certifications, on what types of technology certifications teachers hold. So how many of our teachers are level 1 Google certified? How many have immense certifications going way back? And so we just want to take an overall audit of what certifications our current teaching staff have, because that was one of the action items for moving forward in that, is that we would like to continue to develop the technology certifications of our teaching staff. Any questions?
Okay. So once you do that audit and collect it, what are you going to do with it?
Yes, so we would like to then offer opportunities to have more and more of our staff increase their certification levels. So if you're level 1, you could become level 2. And we're not exactly how that looks. Maybe it's through the strands that Dr. Buckman offers on our PD days, possibly in the evenings. That's how some of the teachers are currently doing it. The design may look differently, but we know that we want to continue to increase the number of our teachers that have technology certifications, so that they continue to incorporate technology and embed that in their curriculum.
Might be a good opportunity for mentorship and identification of those subject matter experts that you can reach out and tap. If we share that information across the district, it's easy to reach out and maybe pull on that string a little bit.
Absolutely, and one of the things that we're looking at is the Tech Ambassador Program. And so those groups will partner with each other, definitely.
Great. Board, any other questions? We'll go to.
I would just like to add, if the board has some time in the coming week or two, that under Goal 2 on our website, you will find a video of a student making a presentation to the Goal 2 area. It's a very impressive presentation on the need for computer science. So I would encourage you to take a view. 20 minutes, but you could watch it very quickly.
Yeah, so Mary Lang, one of our directors, is on our advisory group for Goal 2, and she was at our meeting the other night, and we did have Joel Mawkins. He's a student, he's a 5th grade student from Independence Elementary, and he gave a presentation to a room full of adults on why we need computer science. We need to be teaching it as a special, starting in kindergarten. He is currently teaching it to his 5th grade class, and he presents data and answers questions of the adults. And so yeah, I had asked Jason Adams to record it for me, and he did so on the fly, and so we very much appreciated that, and so we've posted that on the website.
Excellent. Can't wait to see that. Board, any additional questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, as we round down this evening, next on our agenda is our superintendent comments.
Sure, just a few things tonight. In the coming month, Executive Cabinet will complete the last of our after-school chats at each school. This has been something that's been a helpful structure to us to provide two-way communication, updates, and answer questions. You've recently been provided an update on transportation. This week an application fair was held, and we have over 150 interviews scheduled from our existing first student drivers. Francis Howell Central Publication Advisor Matt Schott is a 2019 recipient of the Kennedy Center Stephen Sondheim Inspirational Teacher Award. This award recognizes individuals who have a major impact on the lives of their students. Winners are nominated by former students and are awarded $10,000 in appreciation for their contributions to the field of teaching. Bryan Middle School teacher Erin Pearson has been named a 2018-2019 Life Changer Award winner by the National Life Group. A Spectre teacher who works with students in the district's gifted program, Pearson was presented with the award at a surprise school-wide assembly. The award includes a $1,500 individual cash award and a $1,500 donation from the National Life Group. Francis Howell honored 275 graduating seniors from our high schools at a special luncheon held in their honor at Old Hickory Golf Club last Friday. This group of Francis Howell seniors achieved a grade point average of 4.0 or above on a 4.0 scale. On Friday, April 5th, 4th and 5th grade students across 10 elementary schools in Francis Howell battled one another in a friendly but intense game of trivia. The event gathered some of the top readers from each school to participate in this year's Battle of the Books. The students in the competition read all 12 of the Mark Twain Readers Award books earlier this year, and the competition tested their knowledge of books and also encouraged an appreciation of reading. Just in time for spring cleaning, Francis Howell is offering a community Shred It Day. Francis Howell residents are invited to bring personal and confidential paper documents, such as old tax documents, bank records, credit card statements, etc., to be securely shredded and recycled. The event will take place Saturday, April 27th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Burbus, located at 4606 Central School Road in St. Charles. And then lastly, I'd like to congratulate our newly elected board members, Mr. Hain and Ms. Walker. We appreciate your continued service.
Thank you, Dr. Hendricks-Harris. Board, next on our agenda is our area for comments and requests. Do we have any board requests or comments at this time? Mrs. Stiglich?
Thank you, President Cope. I would like to say a couple things. I had the opportunity, like Mr. Lane mentioned, to attend the national conference in Philadelphia for the National School Boards. What I found out there, it was a huge learning experience, but what I found out is that we have an amazing district, and I think it's related to you people sitting right there in front of us who give us the direction that we need each and every day. But it also is the people up on this dais with me who give of ourselves often, very often, to make sure that we're doing what is best for kids. So I want to thank my fellow board members, the administrative team, and everybody for letting us attend this conference. It was absolutely amazing, and I would encourage anyone to go to another one.
So I'll give a shout out to the PALS program, the Francis Howell Central play team this week. So last night I had the privilege of attending the PALS event, which by the way, we had our largest audience ever. So that was very exciting. So it's nice to, first of all, see the PALS program growing. So thanks for everyone's effort in continuing to promote that program with our seniors in the district. Not those that are graduating, those that graduated quite a while ago. We provided dinner and a play experience for them last night, and right now, Fiddler on the Roof is playing at Francis Howell Central, and they are amazing. So highly recommend it to anyone if you have the opportunity to attend. Any other board comments or requests? Great. Board, let's take a look at our upcoming meetings. We do have our April 18th meeting scheduled. And in your packet, you have our May 16th meeting. Dr. Hovind?
I have one addition for the May meeting. For best practice, we're going to add a second presentation. A group from Independence is going to come and talk about Character Strong.
Character Strong. Wonderful. Any other adjustments
Mrs. Cope, it's not listed here, but May 16th will be the evening that we do the budget work session with the board.
Thank you. Mrs. Cope, we will hope to have possibly the FESPA closure document, the support staff salary schedule recommendations, the substitute teacher pay recommendations, and the extra duty staffing and salary recommendations, all at that meeting as well.
That's going to be an exciting meeting. Any other adjustments to the May 16th meeting at this time? Let's take a look at the June 6th meeting. It seems incredibly short compared to the May meeting. Any adjustments at this time? Board, I'll entertain a motion to return to closed session to complete our unfinished business.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Lang, seconded by Mr. Lang. By roll call.
Mr. Lang?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Board, let's do 10 minutes. Thank you.